basic layout of this war is that you have Israel and the United States on one side and Iran on the other. The Americans and Israelis initiated it. They cited the threat that Iran posed to them. They're now bombing it relentlessly. They have successfully killed a lot of the Iranian regime's leadership, including the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and they're attempting to cripple the country's military, particularly its navy, as well as its capacity to launch ballistic missiles. Now, of course, this is not happening in a vacuum. Iran is surrounded by other countries, and the violence is bleeding over into their territory, so Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, etc. And that is mostly because Iran has retaliated by targeting US military bases in those countries. It has also threatened to attack any ships going through the Strait of Hormuz, which would hurt both regional and global trade. Iran has, for a long time, been a massive source of instability in the Middle East, largely because it sponsors terrorism and extremism outside its own borders. You'll recall that Israel waged a pretty significant campaign against Hezbollah in Lebanon back in 2024. Hezbollah is essentially an Iranian proxy. The same can be said of Hamas in Gaza. Now, the war with Iran obviously carries a lot of risk. When you destabilize a violent, and in this case quite a precariously positioned, authoritarian regime without much popular support, there's really no telling how ugly things can get or what the consequences for the broader region could be. But it's fair to say in general that a cowed Iran, a more circumspect Iran, which is not seeking to interfere in the affairs of its neighbors as much, would be welcomed by most other countries in the Middle East. It would make the region more stable, theoretically.
I hear the people are saying, we're going to have an endless war here. You're not going to have an endless war. I said it could be quick and decisive. It may take some time, but it's not going to take years. It's not an endless war. In fact, it's an effort right now to achieve the peace that we all yearn and pray for. And I think together we'll achieve it.
The campaign against Iran from the Trump administration is encouraging the Iranians to rise up and to tear down their oppressive government, to take control. But thus far, at least, he's not willing to actually make that happen himself. He's confining his actions to bombardment from the air. The reality on the ground is still that the government's forces have all weapons, so there's not really a route for people to overthrow the government. In Iran, Trump is essentially saying, we're going to cut the head off the regime and then see what happens. He's taking much less responsibility for the aftermath, for better or worse. The violence between Pakistan and the Taliban, which now runs Afghanistan, actually has nothing to do with what's happening in Iran. That is, at this point, a long-running conflict. It's one the United Nations and a bunch of other countries in the region have tried to discourage. The latest escalation, which involved Pakistan bombing Afghanistan's capital, Kabul, happened on Thursday night local time, so before the US and Israeli operation in Iran began. So this war really only has three combatants at the moment. It has the United States and Israel, which are attacking Iran, and Iran, which is sort of retaliating. The reason that you see other countries popping up in the news reports, the reason that you see other countries having explosions and being bombed, is because Iran's retaliation has been broad, you could say. There are US bases dotted all around the Middle East. So in the UAE, in Bahrain, in other countries, Iran is targeting those bases with missiles and with drones. Sometimes it misses, which is why you might see civilian buildings go up in flames. Sometimes something makes it through. A drone might make it through the defenses of the US bases, and that's why you see some casualties emerging from those bases where they had been struck by Iran's retaliation. Trump, at the beginning of this week, so 3 days after the war began, laid out 4 main objectives, quite broad, and those objectives did not include regime change.
Today, the United States military continues to carry out large-scale combat operations in Iran to eliminate the grave threats posed to America by this terrible terrorist regime. Our objectives are clear. First, we're destroying Iran's missile capabilities, and you see that happening on an hourly basis, and their capacity to produce brand new ones, and pretty good ones they make. Second, we're annihilating their navy. We've knocked out already 10 ships. They're at the bottom of the sea. Third, we're ensuring that the world's #1 sponsor of terror can never obtain a nuclear weapon.
The danger here, because for the opening days of the campaign, the US objectives have been so ill-defined, so open-ended, is that we could get stuck in a cycle of escalation. So you have an Iranian regime which is not willing to bow to the demands of Israel and the United States, which is determined to struggle for its survival, which has a monopoly on violence inside its own country. And you have a US campaign which doesn't really have any set win condition. It's not as though the United States said, okay, these strikes are designed to kill the Ayatollah, and now we've accomplished that so we can stop bombing. They're very open-ended. How do you judge when Iran is no longer capable of sponsoring terror in the region? That's a very amorphous thing. It's very difficult to just draw a line under and say, okay, mission accomplished. I suppose the least messy scenario might be that the bombing continues for a couple of weeks and then Donald Trump, as is sort of his habit, just declares that he's won, whether he has or not, and withdraws. But there is certainly a scenario in which it just becomes a cycle of ever more escalating violence, and that turns the region into a mess, and nobody has any idea what the consequences of that could be.
As you see very well, they have no Navy, it's been knocked out. They have no Air Force, it's been knocked out. They have no air detection, that's been knocked out. Their radar has been knocked out. And just about everything's been knocked out. So we'll see how we do, but we're doing very well. We have a great military.